So the Seahawks have made their first couple of moves in free agency, and that is to retain a couple of players. Noah Fant signing on a 2-year contract, Leonard Williams signing on a 3-year contract. My reaction to both deals, perfectly happy with both. I didn't want the Seahawks to come into free agency and just start throwing money around. And when you look at some of the initial deals for some of the bigger name free agents, let's say, for some of the positions that were the trendiest positions in free agency, you could barely believe what was going on. Like, I didn't want the Seahawks to go and spend, I don't know, 20 million a year on Bryce Huff. I didn't want the Seahawks to go and spend 20 million a year on Robert Hunt or a Jonah Jackson or somebody like that. I thought the guard market in particular was really scary. And it says it all, really, that you can get a player as readily available as Kevin Dotson for a ham sandwich in a trade a year ago. He has one decent season for the Rams, and then he's signing a $16 million a year contract. And I want the Seahawks to invest in the trenches as much as anybody. But that just goes to show that sometimes you've just got to be clever. You've got to be savvy. You've got to know an opportunity. You've got to be able to bring a player in and develop them. I think that's one thing that the Seahawks have not done in an awful long time is develop an offensive lineman who's, you just bring somebody in and turn them into a quality starter. All good offensive lines have players in them that are not first round picks, that are not expensive free agent signings, that just the coaching staff has got them in and got them working within the scheme, and they've elevated their performance. The Seahawks have got to do a bit of that. And yes, there's got to be investment there as well, but not to the tune of $20 million a year for non-elite players. So I didn't want the Seahawks to get into that market, and I was really pleased that they didn't. They stayed clear of that, unless they were going to go and sign Chris Jones. Obviously, he re-signed with the Chiefs. For me, there was no interest. There wasn't a single deal for an outside free agent that made me think, I wish the Seahawks had done that. There was nobody. And then when Noah Fant signed, looking at the numbers, it's basically like $21 million, isn't it, over 2 years. Curtis has been sort of estimating the cap hits. He thinks the first year cap hits can be about $7 or $8 million. For Leonard Williams, it's the fact that it's sort of $21.5 million a year. It's probably a little bit pricey. It's probably a couple of million more than I would have been really, really comfortable with. But, when you're kind of getting into that kind of range there, is it worth losing a player for a couple of $1 million a year? Probably not. Defensive tackle is a premier position. It is a position where it's very difficult. I think it's a lot easier, for example, especially in this draft class coming up, to find a guard, whether that's with your first pick or the third round or the fourth round, than it will be to find a really, really good defensive tackle. So you go and sign Leonard Williams. You've been looking for that type of player for a long time. You get him for 3 years. It means that, and I know people are going about sunk cost. My God, if I have to hear those two words again. But now you can say, well, they spent a second round pick and it wasn't for 10 games of Leonard Williams because they've re-signed him. And, you could, I'm sure when they're asked about it, they'll say that sort of spell that he had in Seattle last season helped make him want to stay. So I don't believe in the sunk cost thing. I think they've just retained a player, and I think they aggressively went after him with the intention of keeping him, and they've paid what it takes to keep him because they really want him as a player. And look, if Mike McDonald can turn Justin Madubuike into a really, really productive defensive tackle, what can he do with Leonard Williams? I'm really interested to see what he can do with Leonard Williams because he is quite creative up front with his stunts. He does set up opportunities for players and openings. There is a bit of manufactured pressure there, but it works. And, having Leonard Williams in the middle, whether he's the one sort of that you're manufacturing opportunities for, or whether it is your edge rushers, I just think this is going to bring everything together. So I am interested to see what he can do in Mike McDonald's defense. I'm perfectly happy to see him come back. I think he played better than, I think there's been a bit of revisionist history that I've heard in some quarters over the last few days with people saying, he wasn't a difference maker and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. I think we forget how just appallingly bad the defense was last year, appallingly coached. I think with the staff that we have in Seattle now, you can see how much more exciting it is than what they had last year. And I think expecting him to shine in that defense is probably very optimistic. And there's probably a couple of other players in this defense who may well go and excel in other places now that they've left Seattle schemes, or at least the schemes that were in place in the past. And I think Leonard Williams could be a really useful player. And he's only a year older than Christian Wilkins. I get the sense if the Seahawks had assigned Wilkins for like another 5-6 million more, whatever it was, that everyone would have thought, oh, great, well, how exciting. But Leonard Williams is, he turns 30 this year. I think Christian Wilkins turned 29 this year. So not a massive age difference. You keep him in there, and I think it's a decent sign. And it takes a major need off the board for the draft. Because now you have Jaron Reed, you have Cam Young, you have Leonard Williams. Is there room for another? Yeah, there is, but you haven't got to go chasing that at any point now. I think you just wait for opportunities. You see what happens in free agency over the next few weeks. It might be that a player comes to you in the draft that you'd be interested in. So I think it's a good sign, and I'm happy with it. And with Noah Fant, it's not a good tight end draft. The numbers are very limited there. So if you're not going to get Brock Bowers or Ben Sinnott or Cade Stover or Theo Johnson or Sanders from Texas, then there's just guys that you're taking a chance on physical qualities. And look, that can really work, but you don't want to be banking on that as your tight end one. So I think bringing him back, he's only 26. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he can do, because there's always been a player in Noah Fant. That's why he was a top 20 pick. And I think he's been let down by circumstance. Obviously in Denver, being a bit of a mess there. Drew Lock never did anything in Denver. And then he comes to Seattle, and, the Seahawks have not been consistent on offense. They've never really, under Carroll, known how to use a tight end. And now he's got an offensive coordinator who I think does know how to use a tight end. And I'm interested to see how he gets on. So as far as I'm concerned, listen, I can't say that when I saw both deals on Twitter, I wasn't doing cartwheels around the living room. I wasn't sort of jumping for joy and punching the air, but neither was I disappointed at all. And as I said earlier, there hasn't been a single signing yet that's made me think, I wish the Seahawks had done that. I wish they'd have signed that player for that amount. And that includes Jordan Brooks moving on. And that includes Colby Parkinson moving on, and whoever else is going to move on. There was just, it was a big old meh for me. I don't want them to go and spend huge money on Patrick Queen. I don't want them to go and throw money at other positions. I think just look for opportunity. What if Jeremy Chinn's market's going to be quiet? What can you do a deal there? If Devin White's market's quiet, can you do a deal there? Look for opportunity. Look for players who can play beyond their contracts. That is what I want the Seahawks to do, because as I keep saying, until they are in a position where they have a franchise quarterback and a difference-making pass rusher, I think this is kind of window dressing. Now, maybe they think that Leonard Williams can be that impact pass rusher. I mean, he has been for flashes in his career. He's never been a Chris Jones. Maybe they think he can be that, but you've still got to go and get the pass rusher. So I don't think sort of throwing loads and loads and loads of money at big splash signings is what they need to do. I think they need to look for value, opportunity, try and build something new and different in Seattle now. And I'm confident that seems to be what they're doing. And they sort of seem to have known. They said they prioritize Leonard Williams. They go and bring Leonard Williams in. They have gone and got Noah Fant. It seems like they're very calculated with the decision-making, being very careful with this. They're walking away from things that aren't right for them. So good for them. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with it. And we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think of these two signings. I'm sure it's going to produce mixed opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, I've not got any issue with Leonard Williams and Noah Fant coming back, and at the prices that they've been signed at. It's fair enough as far as I'm concerned. Like the video, make sure you subscribe for all of the free agency reaction and all the draft thoughts on the Seahawks. Until next time, bye for now.